share with you a little bit about Gabe and then a little bit about Nikki as I see life. So the first story I want to tell you is a story called Holding Baby Caitlin. About 22 years ago, we only had testosterone in this family. And all of a sudden there was some estrogen that had arrived in the Bay Area, and so I took all the boys in the car and I took them down to Diana's house because baby Caitlin was born. And there was sort of a competition, and we had to draw straws as to who was going to get to hold baby Caitlin, and she was 2 or 3 days old. And Gabe won the long straw, and he sat down in the chair, and baby Caitlin was placed in his arms. And baby Caitlin fell asleep. 3.5 hours later, Gabe would not let anyone touch baby Caitlin because she was sleeping. Baby Caitlin has grown up to be a very wonderful woman. And my sister and I, her mother, Gabe's aunt, often are amazed at how this happened. Baby Caitlin is in India working on microfinancing for underprivileged women, and that's why she can't be at the wedding today. But one of the reasons baby Caitlin is who she is because at the time she was 3 days old, she'd spent over 10% of her life wrapped in the arms of Gabriel Fett. There is only one other woman in this world who's going to spend more than 10% of her life wrapped in the arms of Gabriel Fett, and that is Nikki. So the next segment here, and I'll make this one short, it might be inappropriate, but it's called 0-3 Tenacity. Gabe was a soccer player. We were at a Nomads tournament in San Diego one year, and it was halftime, and they were down 0-3. And the coach gave him a pep talk, and Gabe called me over and said, bring me some water. And he said, this was the quarterfinals, so you win or go home. And he said, go see who's winning in the other bracket. I want to know who we're going to play. And I said, are you insane? You're behind 0-3. And he said, Dad, we're the better team. We're going to win this game. It didn't always happen, but he did win that game, and they went on to win the semis, and they went on to win the tournament. So that's what I call 0-3 tenacity. As a parent, oftentimes we see the people our children date for a while, and we are
worried.
We unconditionally love them, but we're aghast at what may or may not be in the future. Gabe was 0-3 in that department. I can't tell you why, but those manipulative little scheming bitches. And then along came Nikki. So, oh no, dear, you're not in that group. So Janice and I were on vacation. Actually, we were on our our honeymoon in Mexico, and we had sent Gabe an email, and he sent us back an email, and this was in 2008. This was in November of 2008, and I don't even think Nikki knows this, but I got an email, and it said, Dad, I'm glad you're having fun, but I got to tell you about my date last night. Her name is Nikki. Now, as I read this email to Janice, we both looked at each other, because usually it took 6 months and a little bit of waterboarding to get somebody's name out of it. And we read the rest of the email, and he ended by saying, when you meet her, you're going to love her. No, actually, he said, when you meet her, you're going to fall in love with her.
Like I did.
And we didn't know really what to make of this. But I answered his email, and I made a mistake. I said, Gabe, I'm glad you're having a good time. I'm not going to fall in love with Nikki because I've fallen in love with Janice, and she has 100% of my love. And about 3 months later, I fell in love with Nikki. How can you not? You all know here tonight. How can you not fall in love with Nikki? One of the things I love about Nikki is she's sensibly frugal. Well, actually, before tonight I had that feeling. Before we had this Gucci Cartier Ritz-Carlton wedding with the Nazi wedding planner. But for those of you who don't know, Nikki drives a 1942 Toyota named Matilda with 580,000 miles on it. And I like that. In fact, I've changed the oil and put new brakes on Matilda.
Me too.
And yes, who has not? And as you all look around this beautiful venue and see this wonderful wedding and enjoy yourselves, here's my vision of what I really see. Another 640 quarts of recycled oil and 24 bags of brakes. They're going to have to make it up somewhere. So in the end, I want to say, the final thing I have to say is called passing the torch in the Bank of Dad. So when it became clear to me that this event was really going to happen, it became a marker. And I think Jane and Fred and Janice and Mary and myself, you know, when your children start growing up, you feel a little more mortal. And we all feel a little more mortal for a lot of reasons these days. But the reality is, nobody makes it out alive, and the beat goes on. And so the beat is going to go on with Nikki and Gabe, and that's part of what this union means tonight. And so I had a conversation with John, the oldest son, and then I waited for Gabe to come up, and I wanted to have this conversation with him. And it's just about passing the torch and how I'm going to be moving on a little bit. I don't need to be the alpha dog anymore. Not that I ever was. Did I say that wrong? Gabe might call me the dictator. So I thought, you know, these guys have done good. Yeah, Gabe called me up about 3 years ago and he said, Dad, I have some money saved up. And I almost fell out of my chair. Are you kidding? He's got a positive net worth started? That's the effect of Nikki. I know there's a bank of Nikki. I didn't know there was a bank of Gabe. So Gabe came up for Christmas and I talked to Janice and we decided, you know, over the time that Gabe had gone to college and wrecked a few cars and ran my Harley into a deer in Mendocino. And,
That was me.
Wrong son. He didn't wreck the Harley. Although I understand the police record says it was Alex because he used his license.
Dirt everywhere.
I'm in a fog. It's when you have this many kids, you get confused. So Gabe came up and I said, and I talked to Janice about this, and I said, listen, I want these kids to start with a zero-sum balance in the Bank of Dad. And it was a down payment on my Ferrari. And Janice pointed out that I have a maximum number of driving points just from the 3 times I've driven the Cadillac. So I didn't need a Ferrari. So Gabe came up and I said, Gabe, come into the back room. I need to spend a little time with you. So I sat down with him and I explained how I talked to John a little bit about what a patriarch for the family means, and you know, it's time for me to go have some fun, and you guys are growing up and you're going to have to pick up the slack. And then I said, and the other thing is, I want you to know that all this money on all these spreadsheets, I've zeroed them out, and I handed him the spreadsheets, and they had a big line, and they were marked paid. And I was almost in tears, because it was an emotional time for me. And I was very quiet. And I waited for Gabe to speak, and he looked at this, and he looked up in his little puzzle and said, Dad, I owed you money?
I didn't know anybody. Yeah, you did.
And then he got up and he understood the message. I sort of surprised him a little bit, but we've talked about it since. And he understands what this means to me and Fred and Jane and Mary and the passing and the carrying on of the family and the name and to that tonight I want to raise a toast. To that is what this means.